Thank you so much for this opportunity, and hi Nellie, we wish you speedy recovery. Measure 58 prohibits teaching public school student in language other than English for more than 2 years. Well, this poorly drafted measure attempts to put a one-size-fits-all requirement on how long students can be instructed in their native language by mandating English only for a set period of time, 1 to 2 years, depending on the age of the student when that student enters our public schools. Of course, students need to learn English, and that's not disputed by the many education experts like teachers, superintendents, school board members, and the PTA who oppose this measure. But the problem is that it makes no sense to set rigid rules about language instruction. There's an enormous amount of research that shows consistently that teaching students literacy in their own language makes them stronger academically when they do learn English. Children are individuals, and each child has unique abilities. This measure makes no exception for students with learning disabilities, and for many school children, this will actually be counterproductive and result in lower levels of achievement. Also, the measure is so poorly drafted that it will certainly result in expensive challenges. For example, the measure text says English immersion required in public schools, but English immersion isn't defined. What's required? It's also not clear what happens to our successful dual immersion programs, like down the street at Barnes Elementary, where they have native Spanish speakers and native English speakers together, both learning to be bilingual and becoming proficient. Also, because federal law requires that students make satisfactory academic progress each year, if this measure is implemented, it will require additional funds and resources to pay for things like more instructional assistants, tutors, and professional development for teachers to learn how to assist the non-native speaking students in English-only classes. Now, Mr. Sizemore talked about other states where this has been implemented. And a comprehensive 5-year study of a similar program in California just found, after 5 years, no evidence to support the argument that one method of English learner instruction is better than another. It's not the language of instruction, but the quality of instruction that truly matters. This measure is simply Mr. Sizemore's vague and flawed idea for education policy. We don't need it. Please vote no on Measure 58. 59. I got up this morning and checked the news. KATU said, a measure on Oregon ballots this November may make your eyes glaze over, but it could have tremendous consequences for you as a taxpayer, and indeed it will. Does it sound familiar, this unlimited deduction for federal income taxes? Well, it should. It's been rejected by Oregon voters before, twice. Well, Mr. Sizemore and the anti-tax activist, I believe it's Lauren Parks who's funded most of this, well, they hope you'll forget all of the problems that led to its defeat before. Well, allow me to remind you. Under current law, as Mr. Sizemore explained, Oregonians can subtract up to $5,600 of their federal income tax liability when they calculate their state taxable income. Measure 59 would remove that limit and permit an unlimited deduction, or a tax break. But what is the effect? The Oregon Center for Public Policy described it like this. Imagine being offered the following deal. In exchange for more overcrowded classrooms, more Oregonians without health coverage, and higher college tuition, you get nothing. And here's why. Because most Oregon taxpayers don't pay enough in federal taxes to fully use the $5,600 deduction at all. So they won't get any tax break. 80% of all Oregonians will share a tiny 3% of this tax break. Well, for middle-income Oregonians, those who make between $30,000 and $50,000 a year, they will get about an additional $2 per year. I hope they don't spend it all in one place. Well, the big breaks. 97% of the tax breaks that come from this measure are going to go to people who make more than $83,000 a year, and the richest 1% of all Oregonians will make out on this. They'll get about half of the tax break. What will it cost? Mr. Sizemore admits more than $1 billion per biennium, up to more than $2 billion. The conservative number, the $1.1 billion, is about equal to the amount of total funding that Oregon public universities will receive from the state in the current biennium. We have a lot of work to do in the state, especially with all of our deferred maintenance on infrastructure. Can we afford the budget cuts of this magnitude? Absolutely not. There's a reason why a majority of states do not allow any deduction of federal income taxes on the state return. They understand it's a costly gimmick that benefits the rich and results in cuts that will seriously undermine education, public safety, health, and senior services. We don't need tax breaks for the wealthy. Please vote no on Measure 59. Measure 60, pay for performance. The text of Mr. Sizemore's measure states that pay raises for public school teachers shall be based on each teacher's classroom performance and not related to seniority. Well, there's a lot that's left unclear with this measure. How is classroom performance measured? How does a district determine whether a teacher is successfully teaching the subject? Teachers' jobs will depend on this, but those questions are left unanswered. Who decides what's successful? How do they make that determination? Mr. Sizemore says that this measure is about the kids. Well, how about using the student comments on ratemyteacher.com? You think that'll work? Well, how about asking the parents? They hear through the grapevine, who are the good teachers? Well, of course not, because that's too subjective. Instead, it's very likely that performance will be measured by student scores on standardized tests. Tests that measure test-taking abilities and skills rather than critical thinking. Tests that create incentives for teachers to focus on test-taking skills like bubble filling and memorization, just more teaching to the test. Just like with Measure 58, students are individuals. They're real people. They're not little widgets. Their learning abilities and needs are as unique as their personalities and diverse as their backgrounds. We all know how much parental involvement and socioeconomic status affect student achievement. To base teachers' jobs and pay on student test scores, well, that'll encourage teachers to go teach in wealthy neighborhoods where there are involved parents, not in low-income schools, and that's not what we need for Oregon children. In his article, The Folly of Merit Pay, education writer Alfie Kohn writes, the premise of merit pay is that people could be doing a better job, but for some reason have decided to wait until it's bribed out of them. Well, I'm in my 15th year as a public school parent, and I absolutely believe that our students need and deserve excellent teachers, but we don't get excellence from our teachers by tying their salaries to elusive standards of success and performance. We get it by letting teachers be creative and thrive, by providing them with administrative support and professional training, and by giving new teachers the mentoring they need. Please join me in voting no on Measure 60.